Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Smithsonian National Education Summit. Thank you for attending the Youth as Agents of Change in Their Community session. My name is Kim Robledo-Diga. I'm the Director of Learning and Audience Engagement at Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in New York City.
And it helps to unmute. I'm Robbie Davis. I am with the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service and Affiliations Program, and I'm the project director for the Museum on Main Street Group.
Hello, my name is Angela Barrera, and I live and work in East Jordan Public Schools. I'm the director of Title VI EL Migrant Services and a teacher of Spanish 4, 5, and AP.
And I'm Kathleen Poole, and I'm the associate director of Kentucky Humanities.
Excellent. Thank you. Now that you've met the team this afternoon, I just want to share at the conclusion of this session, you'll leave understanding how the design process can be a framework for community engagement, the value and benefit of youth as agents of change in their community, multiple case studies, approaches of educators and student work, and understand the Smithsonian civic engagement tools available to you. I wanted to review our agenda for the next 50 minutes. It's a lot to squeeze in, but we'll get it done. Our work in this space will be the first topic we discuss, the process we used. We'll share case studies. We'll share some top level, what we learned, and some starting points of how you can start this work, and we'll end with a question and answer session. The tools you have available to you this afternoon are closed captioning, American Sign Language, and the chat, and a chat moderator. And our chat moderator is Vaso. And I'll pass it up to Robbie.
Thank you, Kim. We're going to begin talking to you about our work in this space and give you some background on the Youth Innovation in Rural America project, or as we've been fondly calling it, YIRA. So if I slip into that, please forgive me. Next slide, please. The Youth Innovation in Rural America program is designed to get students motivated, interested, and inspired to become agents of change in their community, to get to know people that are storytellers, local leaders, thought leaders in their communities, and use design thinking to incorporate what they learn from those community members into great plans for their hometowns. So it's a wonderful opportunity to see students build their own thinking about the future. Next slide, please. Youth Innovation in Rural America started with the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian's Design Museum and Museum on Main Street, which is a partnership between the Smithsonian and State Humanities Councils to provide traveling exhibitions to small town museums and libraries and cultural centers. So with the Rural Network and the design expertise of Cooper Hewitt, we have been able to combine forces and use our Spark traveling exhibition, which looks at rural innovation, and combine that with professional development that's provided to teachers in some of the communities that are hosting our exhibition. Next slide, please. This is a quick view of Spark, the traveling exhibit. Spark looks at kind of, how rural communities across the country have engaged in this kind of community engagement to better their futures. And I'll also say our State Humanities Council partners work very closely with these communities to help them with programming and to highlight all kinds of engagement around the topic of innovation. The host organizations are really the centers of all of this work, and they do an incredible amount of engagement locally, getting to know young people, and we couldn't do it without them. Next slide, please. And to follow on that, Rural Voices are truly at the heart of Museum on Main Street. We're a 30-year-old program that has worked with more than 2,000 communities in every state in Guam. And it is always a pleasure to see how young people are able to access these exhibitions and to access the Smithsonian. But better than that, become real ambassadors for their communities, to become excited about the communities in which they live, sometimes the communities in which they've grown up. And sometimes they don't feel that they always have the best, the best line to getting their information out to people who have power in their communities. And Yura seeks to change that. And we have found that the youth we work with, before the project, 34% generally don't believe that adults listen to them. After the project, we have 82% who believe that they're part of the scene. So that's a wonderful change. Next slide, please. Before the Yura project, 83% of the educators working with us hadn't connected their youth with community stakeholders. That, again, I think is the power behind this project. And it's excellent to see that those walls are broken down and local leaders realize what a great resource young people are. Next slide, please. So our project goals for Yura are to empower students, to kind of give them that opportunity to be agents of change, to get to know who can be helpful to them in their community, and to kind of address that gap in curricula locally where design training and innovative thinking need a bit of a boost at the community level. We also engage students in discussions about local history and culture, and kind of give them that opportunity to look at the past so that they better know where they want to go into the future, and can base their decisions on the knowledge that they've gained. And finally, it's to build that network of community stakeholders. This is probably the most important part of it, because this is where the community involvement happens, and this is where all of those students begin to recognize how they're needed and how they're helpful in their hometowns. Next slide, please. Kathleen, can you tell us a little bit about how you enjoyed participating in your community and helping when you were younger?
I can. I think what we want here is for people watching to add to the chat right now how you as a child might have been involved and participating in your own community. If you could remember some things like that, enter it into the chat right now. That would be great. And in response to your question, Robbie, I was always active with a youth organization in Mississippi where I lived, and even ran as a state officer of the Catholic Youth Organization, and traveled around and worked with other youth, teaching them how to do take leadership opportunities. So that's one way that I participated.
Thank you, Kathleen, and apologies for the bad handoff there. And I'm seeing others are thinking that, picking up trash is part of a youth team in the community, getting involved through their through local religious organizations and churches. So there are a variety of ways that young people find ways to be helpful and to get involved in community service. And we seek to enlarge the number of students who feel comfortable doing that. Next slide, please. And I will pass the baton to Angela.
That's me. Thank you, Robbie.
Eesh.
So now that you learned about the Spark exhibition, the exhibition presents dynamic innovators in rural America. And we wanted to take that exhibition further and offer an opportunity for youth to not just be in awe of the innovators in the exhibition, but to find the innovator in themselves and propose positive change in their community. So how we went upon doing this was to develop a professional development training for educators meant to share a method to bring innovative community work to their town, driven by youth. Next slide, please. We felt the best way to reach youth was to work with the passionate educators like yourself. We hosted the Yura Professional Development Training with educators in Mount Sterling and beyond in Kentucky, East Jordan, Michigan, Nampa, Idaho, and Eagle Butte, South Dakota. You can see some of those amazing educators in these photos here. Next slide, please. This training tapped into an ecosystem of stakeholders and partners. We had K through 12 educators participate who cover the subjects of engineering, science, Spanish language, agriculture. We also had informal educators that didn't come from a K through 12 curriculum-based classroom, such as educators from libraries, teen leaders from the mayor's offices, community centers, and cultural institution educators. And we also had community partner experts, such as local politicians, school parents, business owners and their team members, peer teens, and faith-based leaders, for example. This ecosystem was crucial for the success and sustainability of this work. Next slide, please. So here we're going to start talking about the process. We came to each community not with a how-to, but more of a process as a guide and a framework. And as Robbie mentioned in the beginning, we shared a simplified version of the design process, which offered a blueprint versus a blank sheet of paper. I will share a peek into that process in the next few slides. I'm not speaking about design as an art form or the elements of design, but more about the process of creative problem solving. The design process is not linear, but more organic and messy. But for simplicity, we presented it in a linear form, but clarifying that one will likely need to double back more often than not. Next slide. So here's a quick peek at the process. The training process started with the observe and define. This is the most important step. If one does not get this right, then the rest of the work is on very rocky foundation. One important part of this step is to make a list of project stakeholders. Understanding who you should be designing with is important, so you don't design for others. Next slide, please. Then we had generating ideas. Everyone's probably generated ideas or brainstormed, but they're guiding rules and techniques that lead to more success in that work. For example, we all know the rule of there's no such thing as a bad idea, but there's also shouldn't overpraise what one might think is an exceptional idea. Again, we all know not to be overly critical of an idea, but one needs to do the same with an idea that one feels is fantastic. Because if someone overly praises the kind of great idea, then it tends to shut others down because they feel they can't do better. A better approach, for example, is to not overly praise, but to build on the idea of others. Next slide, please. Then we have a prototype and evaluate. This is another moment to re-engage and receive feedback from project stakeholders. One key aspect of this work is don't take things personally. Youth are encouraged to listen and focus on the goal, but this is hard for some, especially for youth. But if they have their provocation and goals clearly outlined, then they can apply feedback to that design brief versus a judgment of one's contribution to the project. Next slide, please. And then there's the launch. This is the part everyone looks forward to. This is a great time to practice articulating solutions with stakeholders, building networks, and the community can see the youth's work and contribution. And ultimately, it's just a fantastic time to celebrate together. The launch can lead to project implementation, or it may lead to going back to an earlier step of the design process and exploring another iteration that can continue as far as you want to take it. Next slide, please. And through this process, designer characteristics come to reveal themselves, or they start to build these characteristics. Curious and empathetic, playful, deliberate, unbiased, and optimistic. It also is very collaborative work. Varied roles for varied strength. Then we have a more proactive approach versus a passive approach. And the design process offers a responsible framework to ensure you're designing with versus designing for. Next slide, please. So now's my turn to engage in the chat. So now I would love for you to answer this question. what is your comfort level in facilitating a youth-led community project? So we have three choices here. We have a school chair, which is not comfortable, which we all know. An office chair where I feel a little bit comfortable, and the recliner, I feel very comfortable. So if you feel not comfortable right now, which is completely okay, please put in the chat school chair, just type in school chair. If you feel like kind of in the middle, like you feel a little bit comfortable, please type in office chair in the chat. And if you feel very comfortable, this is what you know, please type in recliner. And while we're waiting for the chat to populate, I'll ask my colleague Angela to respond to this. How did you feel about this type of work before you started the year project or this community work?
Thanks for asking, Kim. I mean, I felt comfortable, like recliner level comfortable with reaching out to my parents and engaging them, but I felt office chair level comfortable because I'm relatively new to the area. So I didn't have a lot of contacts with stakeholders in the community. So that was how this process was so helpful for me, because it kind of pushed me to reach out to people that I hadn't met yet.
Oh, perfect. And thanks for sharing. And it looks like in the chat, office chair is the most kind of one that's rising to the top. So it's the same maybe where you're at for many folks, where you had some comfort level, but that extra polish or process or guidance maybe got you into the recliner section. So thank you. Thank you so much. And now, while Angela's still on, let's explore how Yura communities implemented Yura in their own town. So let's welcome Angela Barrera to share her work.
Thanks, Kim. So I live in a small rural town in northern Michigan of about 2,300 residents and a very small Spanish-speaking population that has seen a little bit of growth in recent years. I'm also new to the area. As I mentioned, I had previously been in the Chicagoland area as a bilingual educator and biliteracy coach. And so I had been in a different community for like close to 20 years. And having moved to this small rural town, and I'm in small districts, we wear a lot of hats, right? I had originally signed up for the training, the Cooper Hewitt design training, thinking I might collaborate with some science teachers or STEM teachers and do something like designing an outdoor learning space. My mind, initially went straight to like designing objects or places, physical spaces. But quickly into the process, I learned that actually you can do this in any context, anywhere. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to try this with my Spanish class. So that was exciting. And as the materials are available in Spanish, it wasn't a linguistic departure for me. So I was still able to do what I needed to do in my Spanish language class. So this is our story. Next slide, please. So here, my Spanish class had one student who had recently come from Nicaragua, and then a couple of heritage speakers from Mexican-American families who had arrived in like the 90s as migrant workers and stayed to raise their families. We have a large like fruit industry up here. And as I started bringing in some parents into the classroom, one of my monolingual students commented, and they comprise the majority of the classroom, Ms. Barrera, I've lived here my whole life, and I didn't even know that we have Spanish speakers in the community. So that, helped us embark on this journey of bringing in parents into the school to interview them in Spanish, to get to know each other better, and to for my students to practice their Spanish, their interview skills, and for some of the parents to learn some English. So in this first picture to your left, you see students in that brainstorming phase, lots of sticky notes. And then on the right, they are gathering those sticky notes, categorizing them into themes. And in the center there, you see the essential question that they came up with, which was, ¿Cómo podemos conectar con las familias hispanohablantes? How can we connect with these Spanish-speaking families to make them feel more comfortable in our community? Y ¿Cómo podemos ayudarnos mutuamente con nuestras metas lingüísticas respectivas? And how can we help each other? My students are there to learn Spanish, and some of the parents are there to learn English. So that was our essential question. Next slide, please. And here you can see the students are on the left, like organizing their questions, translating their questions, and preparing for their interviews. And on the right there, you see a parent being interviewed by a group of 2 or 3 students. They're asking questions, taking notes, they're recording all of the interviews. They did about 12 total, about 30 minutes each. Next slide. After the recording, they had to re-listen to their interviews and transcribe the whole conversation. That was really hard. That was like the biggest cognitive push I think that we had. But it was also great from a language teacher perspective. They're having to re-listen to the interviews or rewinding when they don't understand. They're asking each other ideas, questions. Hey, what do you think this is, this person's saying? And some of the children of the speakers were in the classroom like, hey, this is your mom. Can you come tell me what she's saying here? So it was a really great conversation. And on the right there are the two students are analyzing the interview. So then they had to look at everything and look at all the content and come up with themes from the interviews to feed their project ideas. And so the 4 projects they came up with were a bilingual painting class with Luis, who's a talented artist, a community ESL class, a conversation club, and a bilingual cooking class. So those were the 4 projects or prototypes that they came up with. Next slide, please. Here you see that after the interviews, the students organized some games just to end on a really positive, uplifting note. And so we had a lot of a great exchange of laughter and language in both English and Spanish just to end that experience on a really positive note. Next slide, please. And we were invited, along with the other participating teachers who had been to the training, back to the Ravenhill Discovery Center. And this is a place in our community where the training was held. So Cooper Hewitt came and gave that training. And I have never been there. It's just down the street from my house, and I had never been there. And so the training got me in the door. And then we came back for the exhibit. And then I'll explain how we come back multiple times after that. But for now, if you take a look at Luis, so he's our student who had just arrived from Nicaragua. He's a really talented artist. And so we, asked him if he would make portraits. So he made a portrait of all the interviewees, of all the participating parents and community members, which added a really, beautiful touch to the exhibit and the process. And it was here that Kim Robledo Viga from Cooper Hewitt saw our presentation, saw our exhibit, and really liked it. And she gave us some seed money to take the project. She liked the bilingual cooking class. She says, "Hey, I'll give you some seed money. Go ahead and try your project." And so we did that. And she also invited us to participate in the Cooper Hewitt's triennial exhibit this fall in New York City. So we'll be traveling to see that exhibit there, which is really exciting. Next slide, please. With the funds that we received, and it's something that we could have done it internally as well, but it was really generous of the Cooper Hewitt Museum to give us those seed funds. We took our bilingual cooking class on the road, and our first stop was a local farm. You can see it on the right hand side there. That's Monica, and she is in charge of a pop-up Mexican restaurant in this local farm. And so they interviewed her, and then we had some atole, tamales, birria, and got to experience some of her wonderful food. Our next step on the left there, we went to TC Latino grocery store. So this is a Latin American market that families drive 1 to 2 hours from in all parts of northern Michigan to get products, my family included. So it's a pretty special little store. And the students there, Kendra and Rachel, are heritage speakers, and they were really pumped and excited to be able to interview the owners, Sandra Rios and Adolfo Mendez, because their families also shop there. So it was a really beautiful experience for them. Next slide, please. After the interviews, we divided up into groups. So we had parent chefs who were the teachers, and they had a group of 2 or 3 students, and we would go into the store, and there you can see Rosa Ambrosio. She is one of the matriarchs of the community. She's got 7 students in the school system. I just had her youngest son. But so she's taking a group around, showing them the different chiles, showing them the products that she likes, and then they did their shopping. And you can see the students there on the right shopping for the ingredients of their particular recipe. Next slide, please. And then our final stop was at a community teaching kitchen, and it was in Traverse City. And the parent chefs, then we got into groups, and there were multiple food stations, and they made their different recipes with the students. And we broke bread and listened to music and had a really wonderful time. You can see in the back, there is a mural. And we had a community organizer come in and explain in Spanish the origin of that mural. It's dedicated to the farm workers of the area. You can see a cherry tree in the back, and it's cherry season right now. And many of the parents have helped with the harvest. So it was a way to really honor their work in a beautiful way as we enjoyed that food. Next slide. And a related event that we have, we had started before the project, but we did it again this year, is Noche Latina, which is a community food night and a fundraiser. We took students to Puerto Rico the previous year, and this year we're going to Costa Rica. And this is, even though we have a small little town, there were 6 different countries represented. And this is a town that only has 5 restaurants, and 2 of them are fast food. So a community food night like this is a pretty big deal. And it's been a really nice way to get everyone together. Last slide. Next slide. And if you are a teacher of English learners like myself, bilingual educator, this is very familiar to you. But Kim encouraged me to bring this into the presentation, and for anyone who's outside of that, that area. But this is really what drives the work here. What drove the work for us is this notion of funds of knowledge, and just essentially that we all have these cultural practices and bodies of knowledge that are part of our daily existence, and they don't have to come from a university. They don't have to be formal, and it's great that they're experiential, and that wherever you live and whatever level of education and whatever languages are spoken in your communities, if you just reach out to families and ask them what they're passionate about, you can find a really cool project that you could do in your classroom and with your community. And one beautiful thing, Rosa Ambrosio, who I mentioned before, she had those children, 6 other children in the school system. So she'd been with, our public school system for 30 years. And she said to me, Ms. Barrera, this is the first time in 30 years that I've been invited into the classroom. And so not only did she come in as a teacher and an expert, but she's also joining us in the fall to go to New York City to see the exhibit in which she and her son and her daughter and her 2 grandchildren have participated. So it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you. Next slide. And so now we'd like you to take a moment to reflect on the funds of knowledge in your community. So in the chat, if you could, think of what hidden talents exist out there. And Kim, do you have anything while they're typing? Do you have anything you might share from your community?
Having a child that's just completed elementary and middle school, I feel like what I've discovered in a small suburb where I live, lots of creative people who have kind of set design or movie experience, or designers, graphic designers, that seamstress to make costumes. It's from all the parents and the families. If you really look and ask those questions, it seems like it's just like a burst of creatives in my community. And I live in a town that's like 7,000 people. So I was really not surprised. I mean, but you just never think about it. You just meet people at the school drop off, and then you never realize what they can bring to the table. So I would say that would be some funds of knowledge in my community, some incredible creative talent from crafts to more professionalized fields and creative fields.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so much that you could do with that. Like, I'm just thinking small scale crafts to, lower the effective level of the classroom and help people kind of relax, to like a large scale community production. Some of the things that are coming in is artists. Yeah. I mean, Luis being the artist, it was just amazing to have him showcased like that. And now he's going to have his work at the Smithsonian Museum in New York City. So like, I think any, artwork is just amazing. Athletics. Absolutely. I've had some students come in with my younger, students and model that. And let's see, we've got a lot of opportunity for cooking and music classes. Yeah, dancing is such a lovely community event and a wonderful thing to do. And musicians. Yes, beautiful. Those are great examples. So I'll turn it over now. Kathleen has some really great examples in her community of really a variety of ways that she used the design process. So I'll hand it over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Angela. We also participated in a Youth Innovation in Rural America project, and we did it in a number of different communities. So I just thought it would be helpful to share some of the examples of what students, when given the opportunity by their teacher or by their adult leaders, have identified as problems in their own community, and how they were very creative in solving the problem. So I'll start, next slide. I started with Owensboro Innovation Academy. They were the first project to take, first school to take this on. And we met with the students and we did a lot of brainstorming about ideas that they could, or problems that they could identify in their community that they thought they'd like to solve, including such things as vaping and I mean, they just had a whole list of problems they wanted to solve, but they ultimately came in, they all agreed that there was a mental health problem specifically around the transition from middle school to high school. And so since their school, the high school was very close to the middle school, they got together and decided they wanted to work on that transition and planned what they called a mentorship program. They planned a number of activities, inviting the middle schoolers to come to the high school after school for activities that were just fun. And so that they would get to know someone in the high school before they came over. And just by entering the building and coming there week after week for, several weeks in a row, it made the transition so much smoother. And it was so successful that they were even able to get local funding, a hospital locally that said this was a great idea, and they were going to support this activity ongoing for years to come. So they're already planning for the next year of who's going to be the mentors and how they're going to proceed with that. Next slide. Then we moved into Winchester, Kentucky, and got together with the students of George Rogers Clark High School. And the students there identified they said that their community just looked so trashy. That's one thing they didn't like. And then as they kind of honed in on the idea and started talking about it, they realized that a lot of the trash was outside of the middle school. Of course, they were the high school students. They didn't see trash near their school. They only saw it near the middle school. So they decided that it was because these students they were coming out of school at the end of the day with the snacks in their backpack, and there was nowhere to throw trash around. So they just pulled out their snack, ate it, and then threw the trash on the ground. So they actually went to the city council and started talking with the city council about how to proceed with solving this problem, and ultimately planned several cleanup days that they brought the fire department in on and the police department, and all got together and had a wonderful time cleaning up the school. And they did a campaign of some commercials and posters that they put up, and hoping that the trash problem would be solved. Next slide. We also participated in the program with Center College and Danville High School together. They worked on a project. And again, it was a lot about youth not being able to have a safe place to go to. And so they decided to plan together a bunch of what they called a safe space. They found a place that they could meet on Sunday evenings, and just kids could get together in a safe environment and have a movie night and plan activities, play games, and bring kids from different schools together. And then we moved to Frankfort and had two projects there. One, we worked with the gifted and talented kids in middle school. They came together, all the kids from different schools came together. And again, they kind of came up with a litter problem in their community, and had a lot of fun going to the mayor and asking the city to give them some trash cans that they could paint and make. They made stickers that they handed out to all the school kids in the community about how litter was not cool, and made it a really fun event. And they've seen that the litter problem has changed. But I think one of my favorite projects altogether was also in Frankfort, where the kids from the alternative school, who didn't think that they could come up with an idea, actually identified, some of them being homeless, but identified homelessness and feeling left out if you're a teen. And so they developed a compassion project for homeless youth, and got together and made some care packages to give to them, and spent a lot of time making homemade notes about how you were not alone in this process. And so it just showed that when you allow the teens to come together and look at their community and think about problems, they're also very creative in helping solve the problem if given the opportunity. And with that, that's the examples from Kentucky.
Thank you, Kathleen. All of these examples that we've been seeing over the past several minutes are so inspiring and really give us this great picture of just how involved young people can be in their communities. So what did we learn from this project? Obviously, we learned that young people have a lot of energy, but they really need to feel invited into their communities so that they can be engaged in a way that works for them and that also makes them feel like they're a part of something much bigger. Our educators found that it can take time to get a program like this into the curriculum. Obviously, many teachers are overwhelmed with all kinds of mandates and standards that they're working through. So, where does this project fit into that learning? And they found very creative ways and solutions for doing that. Not knowing the end product can be stressful. So, at the beginning of this, no one had any idea what a project would be. What did it look like? How much time would it take? What would it contain? It was up to the students to kind of develop that direction and see where it might go. So that does make it a little bit harder to plan and kind of envision where things are going. But it also is kind of the spirit of the project and can be very exciting. Time and money, resources are always important in these local projects and they need to be identified. Again, students need to feel welcome, and students do bring positive change to their communities. They are an engine for this type of work, and URA has more than adequately proved that. Next slide. And the best part, so we get to hear from the students as well. And one of the students in Kentucky said it was so great for kids to have a voice because you never know just how good their ideas might be and be surprised at what they have to say. And I think that that's something that so many communities across the country can put into practice. And then a student from Michigan working with Angela found that their hometown wasn't quite as homogeneous as they thought it was, that there was diversity, that there were different opinions and different ways of looking at things that opened up new ways of thinking about what the community could be. So this is really where the greatest stuff happens. And Kim, I'll let you take the next slide.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Robbie. Yeah, and I wish we could have invited all our teachers. We had so many more teachers from all the different communities. So we have many from Kentucky and Michigan we can share, but happy that we were able to share these two with you all today. Okay, so the question is, how can you start this work, right? This is the big question. These are just some guides for you all. Identify a place for this work, your curriculum, if you're a K-12 educator, after school program, or maybe there's an existing project that kind of fits this profile of community work. Identify a method or a process. We presented to you the design process, but it could be a game approach, which is closer to what Kathleen did with her work, or there's some other approach that you have. Put youth at the forefront. Work with youth's individual strengths. Some students are tinkerers, so they're great at prototyping. Some are good researchers. Some are strong facilitators. So really, this process really allows you to take advantage of multiple strengths and let go and be a facilitator. As an educator, you're used to guiding the students to what's next. But in this process, it's flipped. It's like you maybe create the constraints of time or budget, and then really allow the rest of that space for students to really grow and be the leaders in this work. Then identify your community partners. Are there the parents, like with Angela, community leaders, business owners, the school district, for example? And then identify a place to share this work. At the end, where do you share this fantastic work? Is it at a school presentation or a town council meeting like Kathleen's students did, or a community showcase like Angela's did in that community center in East Jordan, Michigan? So this is just some really top level items, but it just kind of shows you some of the items you maybe have to start identifying to move this forward. And now, to start this work, Museum Main Street and Cooper Hewitt created resources as guides and tools for you to use. So we created 2 toolkits, which act as a blueprint for this work. Cooper Hewitt's version also is available in Spanish. But each toolkit can be used as a step-by-step approach, or you can do a choose your own adventure approach. Next slide, please. The toolkits are structured to make things as easy as possible. Here's one example. On the left, you see an outline of one technique of many for generating ideas. The sheet lists the time the activity will take, the tools and materials required, the procedure outline. And then the middle sheet is one activity sheet that the students will utilize for one particular activity. But we supply 2 to 3 activity options for each step for you to choose from. And to the right are the facilitator notes. These would be more for the educator or whoever the lead is, which offer guidance with tips and structure suggestions. The structure continues like this throughout the entire toolkit for both toolkits. Next slide. In addition to the toolkits, Museum Main Street created short form instructional videos for youth on topics such as how to give and receive feedback, which is really important. The elements of storytelling. So there's all these short form videos that you can just turn on in your classroom and in 2 or 3 minutes really give fantastic tips to your students. We also together created a card game called Citizen Design. It's a fun group game which offers a quick accessible entry into this work. So there's lots of resources like these and more that we'll be able to share with you all in the future. So we have the Designing for Change toolkits, the Yura Community Conversations toolkit, the how-to video. We have learning labs from the Smithsonian. So these are all resources that when you go to the program session for us, you'll find a link to where all these resources fit in one location. So thank you for sharing this time with us. But before we begin the question and answer portion of the session, I leave you with this question to ponder. How will you engage youth in your community to be agents of change? So I open it up in the chat. If you to leave some time for some questions, Vaso can start sharing some questions with us that you might have so far, but feel free to add more to the chat. If we don't get to your question before the session ends, you can email us and Vaso will share that contact information at the end and we can respond to you later. So if you have any questions, please fill it out in the chat and we can get going. And is there anything while we're waiting for the chat, anything from our group that you feel like you need to add? Oh, I will add something. Angela was kind of skimmed over this, but not only they're traveling to New York to see the exhibition, and just to make it clear, their Euro project is going to be an exhibition as one of 25 projects presented in our triennial, which is our biggest exhibit of the year. And they're the only youth project of the 25. So it's pretty exciting to be able to showcase them in a Smithsonian institution and a national level in New York City. So we're excited to host them. So it all started with this professional development training, and now it's led to these students' work, the student project being showcased at a Smithsonian Museum for tens of thousands to see. So we're very excited about that.
And we are very excited to go. Thank you, Kim.
Okay, I see a question. Because I have run into issues of many organizations in my area having age restrictions on volunteering. Oftentimes students must be 16 or older. Are there certain projects or areas for community work that are friendlier to younger students? Angela or Kathleen, do you have any examples from that in your communities for under 16 for the younger population?
Well, in the projects that our youth planned, they weren't volunteering for someone else. They identified the problem and then constructed a solution themselves and then approached an organization that said, whether it was the city council or in the case of Frankfurt, they went to the homeless shelter and asked what they could do or how they could help. And that's when they developed the idea of the care packages and how they were going to deliver the packages to the other homeless students.
I'll just add that I think as long as we have teachers with the students, we've been able to do a lot of things, not just myself, but, observing my colleagues. There's a lot of volunteerism that happens around town. And there's always just adults, and they get the permission slip. So it can be done with the right permissions.
And Kim, I'll add that there are 4-H programs, 4-H clubs in communities all across the country, not just in rural areas, but also in urban and suburban areas. And they often have programs for elementary and middle school age students. So that's another area where students can get engaged and do volunteer work in their communities.
Yeah, and I will share, though I haven't done this work directly, but I've worked with educators who've done this work. I've found that no one denies a child. If a child comes up to a town council meeting or to a business owner to ask questions of how they can participate or propose ideas, I feel like it's rare where people would close down on that situation and that kind of approach. So I think it's just I think there's a couple examples that hopefully can get you all going. Another question is there an online community for following up and sharing? I don't think we have an online community for the year project, but that would be a good idea, actually. Do you have, Kathleen or Angela, for your work? Did you develop any kind of online community?
There is an online community for humanities councils to share, but it's not really other. We could pass on the information, but we don't. It's not where other people would join that community. I would think, Robbie, probably with the Smithsonian, though, there is a lot of, some chats and opportunities with all the museum on Main Street. Is that correct? Where they could join and share information?
There's a small listserv that we operate that is specific to the program. So we don't really have anything that's connected directly to YERA, but the gears are turning now. Now that we've had this suggestion in the chat, and I'm very interested in seeing what we might be able to do in the coming months to create that. I think it would be an excellent addition to the program. So thank you for that idea.
Yeah, great question, great idea. You're right, Robbie. We're going to have talking about this at our next meetings, I'm sure. We have another question. Are you seeing this work as helpful for direct connections to career-connected learning and career options for youth?
I'll add that, and I'm looking at that next question as well, Kim. I can answer that second one, but I'll just say that one of the students, has thought about medical interpretation as a result of doing some of the, interview translation, and we did move in multiple spaces, a farm, family-owned farm, and we had the larger, entrepreneurship of the store. And this Mexican grocery store also has a place. They have a peluqueria, you can get your hair done. They have a restaurant, you can have a meal. They have a place you can get your taxes done. So they were also exposed to a variety of business models. But I'm looking at that last question there about, did you see the difference between urban and rural schools in terms of student and parent involvement in this type of work? And I came from the school that I taught at before was 1,200 freshmen. So 1,200 kids, freshmen, in under one building. And now I'm in a school that has just 700 K through 12. And I saw very similar parent participation and engagement at both. So I think it'd work in either model personally.
And I'll just add that we only did it in rural communities in Kentucky, but I don't think there would be any difference because it's student led and students can get their parents involved if they're persistent enough.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Robbie, Angela, Kathleen, Vaso, and the ASL interpreters. A special thank you to those of you who attended our session today. And as a reminder, the Smithsonian is a nation's museum, so please reach out with questions, ideas, and the support you may need. Vaso will share my contact information if we didn't get to any questions or if you want to reach out about other matters. And I think that concludes our session. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Gracias.